Welcome. You're about to step into a quiet moment, a space to slow down, breathe, and listen. Have you ever wondered what happens when all the noise fades and only the sound of your own heartbeat remains? Tonight, or whenever you're listening, I want to share something simple yet powerful, something that might change how you experience stillness. And if you stay with me until the end, maybe, just maybe, silence won't feel the same anymore. Some people are afraid of silence. They rush to fill every room with sound. A TV, a phone call, someone's voice. But what if I told you silence can be a companion? Being alone can be an encounter, not abandonment. Silence is also an answer, a presence. Sometimes it's in the noise that we lose ourselves, and in the silence that we find our way back. There are days when all you need is to hear your own heartbeat, steady, unhurried. Sometimes what feels like emptiness is actually space waiting for something real. I once met a woman, Miss Eleanor. She lived in a small, simple house at the end of a quiet street. Every time I walked by, she'd be sitting on her porch, coffee in hand, just watching the world pass slowly. They said she lived alone. Her kids had moved away, her husband had passed on, and she spent most days in silence. But her silence wasn't empty, it was full of meaning. One day I finally asked, "Miss Eleanor, don't you ever feel lonely?" She smiled, the kind of smile that comes from deep inside, the kind that doesn't need to hurry. She said, "Son, there are people surrounded by crowds at parties, at dinner tables, in marriages, and they still feel alone. And there are others like me who live quietly and feel whole, because we've learned how to be our own company." Her words stayed with me. Maybe the problem isn't being alone. Maybe it's being with the wrong people, or worse, being far from yourself. And no one really teaches us how to be with ourselves. We have to learn by feeling. We spend so much time trying to fill the outside that we forget to care for the inside. But the inside needs attention, stillness, honesty. It needs us to sit down with ourselves and ask, what's hurting in there? Or what have I been ignoring in me for too long? Solitude, when lived well, doesn't feel heavy. It teaches, it reveals, it prepares. It clears space for something new to grow. Some people only discover who they really are when everything else goes quiet. And yes, that can be scary. Silence brings up what we've been hiding, but it also brings direction. It brings strength. It's in that quiet meeting with yourself that freedom begins. The freedom to stop pleasing, to stop proving, to know you are enough. If you're listening to this now, maybe you've been needing a bit of that freedom too. Maybe the world has been loud lately. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you just need to breathe and remember, you matter, even when no one sees you. I remember another story, a man named Charles who lived alone on a little farm. When asked if he ever felt lonely, he'd say, "Lonely? Never. I've got the birds, the breeze, the memories, and me. I've got enough." That stayed with me. Charles wasn't avoiding solitude, he embraced it. He knew that being with himself wasn't a punishment, it was a privilege. Another day, I saw a young woman sitting alone at a quiet cafe. She wasn't on her phone. She was just sitting, looking outside, sipping her coffee slowly. Someone whispered, "Poor thing, maybe she's waiting for someone." But maybe she was waiting for herself, and maybe she'd already arrived. And you, when was the last time you truly listened to yourself? When was the last time you turned off the world and tuned in to your own breath, your own truth? When was the last time you were alone and didn't feel afraid? Not every empty space is loneliness. Sometimes it's just a garden waiting to grow. The kind of solitude that heals. Doesn't feel heavy. It welcomes. It teaches. It brings you back to you, and when you reconnect with yourself, the world starts to make sense again. You stop begging for love, for validation, because what's inside you is already enough. So if tonight or today the world feels too quiet and you're feeling alone, maybe it's not a warning. Maybe it's an invitation to listen, to reconnect, to rest, to quiet the world and hear your own essence again. To discover that within you, there's more peace than you thought, because in the end, being alone is not the same as being lonely. It's the chance to come home, and that home is you. May you find yourself, even in the silence. And may that silence hold you like an old friend, like a gentle hand on your shoulder saying, breathe. You're exactly where you need to be, and everything is okay. Thank you for being here. If this story meant something to you, leave a like and subscribe. This is a space for calm stories, sincere words, and a place to rest your mind.